For nearly a century, the US government has declared marijuana to be illegal. But over the past decade, there's been a strong decriminalization effort resulting in confusing and varied observations about the use of marijuana and cannabis. The church did not have to give a great deal of thought about this because the government declared it illegal. But as Todd Miles, the author of Cannabis and Christian, says, civil law is not a reliable indicator of what is right or wrong, wise or foolish. Hello and welcome to the Lead Square Call. My name is Malcolm Tyree, and it's my privilege to be our host for a monthly conversation with pastors and leaders, helping us to think well and amplify our leadership. Because when one leader talks to another leader, that puts two leaders together, which is Lead Square. That's what this is about. For this particular conversation, we're talking about what arguably is a prickly subject, thus the shirt for today. We're talking about marijuana and the church. I'm privileged to be joined by two pastors, one in the Corpus Christi and the other one in Southwest Michigan. So we've stretched them pretty far across these lower 48. I want to take a moment here and introduce Pastor Ray Hodges from Corpus Christi. Ray, give us just a glimpse as to kind of, who you are and kind of the church that you pastor, and maybe why it is that you said yes to joining this prickly conversation about marijuana and the church.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ray Hodges. I am the pastor of Resolute Church in Corpus Christi, Texas. And I've been a pastor since 2010. And so my experience with marijuana in particular is one of addiction. I spent all of the 1990s completely high, and so I have a bit of experience with that. And so if this helps anybody, I would love to share my story and experience.
Thanks. So my name is Jaime Cervantes. I am the pastor at the First Church of God in Benton Heights in Southwest Michigan. I've been serving in that capacity for 3 years now. One of the reasons my story is a little similar to Ray's, my past, I have a history of addiction, and so marijuana was a part of that story, along with various other substances. But so recovery has been a big part of my ministry. Even before I was a pastor, I've worked with people in recovery, and even now as a lead pastor, we have a Celebrate Recovery ministry that runs out of First Church. So, and it's a thriving ministry. So this is something that's close to my heart. I know firsthand the effects, destructive outcomes, and everything that's associated with marijuana use. And so this is something that's really important. And I agree with you. I don't think that the church talks about this enough. I think there are several other things we're well versed in, but this isn't particularly one of those.
Well, guys, thank you for taking the opportunity to chat and talk about it from your particular experience. And a lot of folks are probably in a position like I am, in that I've never smoked marijuana, I've never consumed marijuana in any edible format or whatever. Yet I know many people who have, and I know many people in my family who've had close encounters. I recall growing up and my mom's sister sending me to the car to get a cigarette for her, and she said, "Don't bring the funny cigarettes." And so I, at 9, 10 years of age, I didn't know what that meant. But now looking back on it with my gray beard and all, I know what that is. There was those special alligator clips holding together the cigarette. I didn't know what it was, but she said, "Leave those ones alone." Guys, I have just a simple question to start with, and Pastor Jaime, we're going to start with you.
Sure.
What makes marijuana so appealing? I mean, right now we're in this society where, just a year ago from when we're having this conversation right now, a Olympic athlete was suspended from the games because she was found to have used marijuana prior to the games, because as she described it was helping her grieve a loss in her family. What is it that, from your perspective, maybe out of your personal experience, conversation with others, but what is it that makes marijuana in particular so appealing?
The physical and effects of marijuana are appealing to people, but I want to take a little bit of a different angle here. I think what's appealing to a lot of people, especially young people, about marijuana is that it is so entrenched in pop culture, and it's everything else that comes with that scene. So it's not just it's everything that's around the marijuana use that's really important to people. The social, whether it's social life, the spaces and places and the people involved. So I think it's more than just the usage itself. Think of it like alcohol in a sense. People Alcohol is associated with parties, with bars, with scenes. And so I think there's a little bit of a social component here, a socializing facet to it that's very attractive to people. But yeah, it's the low inhibition, the feeling that it brings upon people, and every day it's more and more potent. So I think that that's definitely something that's very attractive to people.
Yeah, that's exactly where my mind went as well. That I mean, it's almost like an endorsement from the celebrity culture, and everything from movies to music videos. They just show this lifestyle with the flashing lights and the cash flying everywhere, and scantily clad men and women, and it just invokes this imagery that people are attracted to, and it just fills the senses with every. I mean, we all have this innate ability to lust after things, and then of course the endorsement from people who, like for myself, I would hear the stories from my older brother or from people in school that would talk about how easy it is to get, and the good times that they had with it. And so it's very alluring and attractive. That's a great word for it. And so yeah, I think it's that endorsement, and as Pastor Jaime said, that social aspect of it. Man, you look at beer commercials, it looks like a small group, you know. And so that's how it's portrayed in the images that people see.
And if I may add, I think we also live in a really, and I know you, both of you will agree, we live in a very high anxiety world. Um, Anxiety is at an all-time high, and I think that some of the attraction to it is that it may, for a lot of people, take the edge off.
Well, let's lean into that kind of
Sure.
way of thinking right there, Pastor Jaime, a little bit. I mean, so one of the urban legends that is associated with marijuana is that it's good for anxiety.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious, maybe what are some other urban legends that you've heard out there that you maybe want to kind of push back a little bit on, that like, yeah, that really just gets at me.
Oh,
What?
I've got one. I've got one that it makes you more creative. I, I that one's astonishing to me because I mean, just pick an article, any credible medical peer-reviewed journal will tell you. I've never ever seen that anywhere except in conversations between people that claim that somehow it makes them more more creative, and
Yeah,
somehow it opens up that part of them.
Ray,
I
what
still
about you?
don't think
What's
it's true.
Yeah, what's
yeah.
one of those urban
Man, we're on
legends?
the same wavelength, brother, because that's exactly what I was. That's what you hear all the time. And as a person who partook of that drug for many years, that I would say that that, and I would. You don't know that I'm also a barber. I've been a barber for over 35 years, so I spent a good 15 years smoking every day, and would cut people's hair high, and I would say that those things, but what I realize now is that it just made me look creative, because I was like concentrating. I was trying not to cut my finger off, and what it did do, you must say that the euphoric feeling of it does intensify. Like if I was to look at Malcolm's shirt right now and I was high, like I'd be like, wow, wow, but I'm not creative. I'm looking at somebody's creative work, and it just, I don't know, it just, but yeah, so there's that false sense of creativity, and it's just not true.
There's also, there was always, I can remember in the circles that I ran, there were individuals who just swore that better at everything, that it made them better at everything to somehow be, including driving and things that, and things that just aren't, that are dangerous, quite frankly. And oh no, it makes me sharper, and
Yeah.
it's clear that it does not. It just doesn't.
That's interesting that you bring out how it just kind of distracts the senses and intoxicates us is probably the better word. That I'm more creative, I'm better at driving, I'm faster, man. Look at my hands, they move so fast. All these things that we kind of see. But I mean, in its core, marijuana is intoxicating, and so it kind of addresses some of those sort of things. Todd Miles, in his book that I mentioned earlier, Cannabis and the Christian, he said this. He said people have a strange devotion to marijuana and are relentless in their defense of the drug. Rarely will anyone brag about their cocaine use. People usually don't even joke about drinking early in the morning, but marijuana advocates are often quick to trumpet their use and extol marijuana's benefits. How do you guys feel about that idea there, and that sentiment that, hey, there's just something like, passionately, for lack of better words, righteous about marijuana use? Pastor Ray, let's start with you on that one.
Over the years, having worked in a barbershop, you work on every kind of person. 1 minute it'll be a pastor, the other it'll be a law enforcement officer, and then a drug dealer or someone just who recreationally uses. And that type of person will say something like, that hey, God created it. He put, the Indians, they loved it, and they were connected with God, and so yeah, that it's all natural, so there's these ideas that just kind of how do you say it, by the way, if you can't tell that I actually stutter, so I apologize for that. But yeah, so just people have the wrong idea, period.
I'm gonna push back on something you said a little bit. You said that people don't brag about their about. I agree with maybe a controlled substance like cocaine and heroin. People don't brag about that, but alcohol, I'd say people brag about it. They wear T-shirts that brag about it. They post things. Here's what it is. I'm gonna go back to the culture. I'm gonna go back to this pop culture. There's outward bragging about smoking pot and drinking Patron or whatever the new mixed drink they like is. So no, it comes with the party life, and so I think there's that part of it. And so it's this culture of this marijuana culture that's always existed since musicians started to kind of endorse it. And those same musicians might never talk about their hardcore drugs that they use, but marijuana and drinking is something that music has always talked about, always in very explicit ways. And so I think there's that's a big piece of it. And there's for whatever for a lot of reasons, people seem to differentiate between, hey, this is a controlled substance, this is not.
Let's talk a little bit about some of these ideas you guys are bringing up. Ray, you brought up the idea that marijuana is natural, man. It grows in the field, and so therefore it's a gift from God. How is it that we as Christians, as pastors, how is it that we can respond to that kind of perspective and that?
They're very thin arguments, but now as a pastor, I take the approach that my pastor had on me. I mean, my pastor knew me throughout that entire 15-year ordeal that I went through. And so he was very loving, very patient. I never felt judged. He would confront me. He would hold me accountable, but I never felt judged. I never felt like, hey, you get it together, or you got no business, being here. As a matter of fact, he made us feel very welcomed and loved. And just like you said, Pastor Jaime, in our pre-meeting, that it was the love of Jesus that overwhelmed me eventually, and it was a patient love. I mean, Paul talks about how love is patient, and I experienced that. And so So when people have those arguments, sometimes we can't really argue with people. You know, you're never going to intellectually change somebody's mind. And so as a perspective, or the perspective that I have is I just simply love them where they are patiently, and I'll take what they give me, and I just play the long game.
When Paul tells us, the question should be what's right with it. Tell me what's so good about it. What is it that just anything? I feel like it's a really low bar. I mean, you can make certainly a physical argument for why it's bad for you, and some of the things, the cost benefit analysis from a health standpoint, it's really easy to point out that it's not good for you. Okay, and from a emotional standpoint, you know what it does? It kills motivation. Listen, pastors, when this stuff kills motivation, that's what it does to the people, to your flock, to your sheep. And from a spiritual standpoint, I just feel like, talk about compromising. It's really one of the biggest dangers about marijuana is more than just the substance itself. It is the people, the places, and the things that are associated with it. The people, places, and things. God has called us to be set apart. It will take you to places you don't belong, with people you shouldn't associate with, doing things you have no business doing as a believer. It will compromise your testimony, and on and on and on. And so what I would do is a total whole cost benefit analysis for the believer and say, here it is. And so we're followers of Christ. We're the light of the world. We should reflect the Lord. Does this achieve that?
When you hear people come at you with the medicinal argument with regards to marijuana, what does that stir up in you? What does that kind of create for you as you navigate through that? Pastor Jaime, we'll start with you.
I'm not a doctor. I've read a lot of material on this. My undergraduate degree, we spent a lot of time looking at this very thing. Are there medicinal benefits? Yes, but I would caution that there are also medicinal benefits for opiates or synthetic opiates, which are highly addictive, highly destructive, killing more young people. Oxy, fentanyl, heroin, and I mean, so is there a medicinal, a medical use for these things? Yes, but consider the side effects. Consider how serious it is. And if you find yourself in a difficult situation, if you really are going through a cancer treatment and this is on the table, then consider it prayerfully. But at that point, it's no longer recreational. So I think that's a separate argument I'm willing to have with someone, with a believer, to say, hey, make this decision with prayerfully, involve the Lord, your family, your pastor, your doctor. I can hear that, but for the recreational user, that's just when I hear that from that person, in my mind, now you're reaching. You really are.
Yeah. So Pastor Ray, what would you add to that, in the sense that, for the recreational user to bring that argument in, okay, but for those who are actually in the medical condition, who are considering it, what insight, advice, how would you counsel them as a pastor?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there is two sides to this. Recreational use is one thing, and Miles brings this up in the book. When he goes into the dispensary and he asks innocently, what other reasons would someone smoke marijuana? See, and this is the little nuance there is, if we're talking about smoking it, we're talking about recreational use. Now it's in all kinds of like sports cream type stuff, and just all kinds of, actually the shop that I work at, there's a dispensary of it's called a smoke shop, right? And they got all kinds of paraphernalia in there, and I didn't even know it came in a vape form. You can get it where it doesn't even smell.
Wow.
I remember in the 90s, people used to thought that I smoked cigarettes, and later I had to confess, I'm like, I really never smoked cigarettes. I was just using it to cover up the smell of the weed, and which wasn't working anyway. I was only fooling myself. But there's also this separate set of products that are like snacks and edibles. But then you have your medicinal type, and I think the line is being blurred, and that's a problem, because I mean, yes, if you're going to it for medicinal purposes, I mean, you're so close to crossing that line, just like the opioid crisis, and this is even more accessible, than
Right.
that. So yeah, it's real dangerous. However, it is in the earth, and I believe that God put it here for a reason. I mean, I don't think it's to use it the way it's being used right now in terms of being recreational, but it is in the earth, and they have found medicinal values to like CBD stuff, which does not have THC in it. And so I think there is a distinction, but the distinction isn't real clear to people. And so, I mean, because they got the pictures of it, they got so that's the problem, so I do believe that it can be used medicinally, but it's just so close to being accessible to the point of it being abused.
We're making it cute to use marijuana. I've never seen painkillers or opiates kind of presented in that form. And I think that what you're saying, Ray, is it's really sending a really bad message. And so this is no longer has anything to do with medicinal use. Let's face it. What we're talking about, gentlemen, is recreational use, rampant recreational use. That's where we're headed in this country and in our society. And that's
By the
concerning.
way, a lot of major snack manufacturers have jumped on the bandwagon. And like, man, a guy walked in the shop the other day with like a little box of Cheetos. I mean, Cheetos brand Cheetos, but they're the THC infused Cheetos. And was passing them out, and I was like, I've never seen that before in my life, where it's being endorsed by a major manufacturer. So I mean, we're going to start to see Coca-Cola infused THC, Starbucks with THC. I mean,
yeah, well, I don't know about the THC, but definitely CBD. I've seen drinks infused with CBD and things like that. And I mean, there is a humorous element that, they're putting it with Cheetos, knowing that, a common characterization of somebody who is using marijuana is that they've got the munchies, and
Sure.
Cheetos fit that category pretty nicely. My shirt could be confused for a bag of Cheetos. So, guys, let's think about something just a bit. One of the major discussion points with regards to marijuana is that it makes life easier. It calms the nerves. It chills me out. Maybe it doesn't make me as overly ambitious because I'm a hard driver and I just got to chill sometimes. And there's a chill feature to it. But there's also the sense in which, we're hearing it used in athletics and other places. It's a pain reliever. It helps with my recovery. It seems as though we're trying to avoid something deep and dark inside of us, and that somehow or another marijuana is helping us to either placate that, numb that, or avoid that. I'm curious, Pastor Ray, you're really nodding your head on this. How do you feel about the need of the popular culture to avoid the deepest, the longings, darkest moments, the pain, the discomfort that they're going through in life? How is that affecting us in our ability to be human?
Yeah. I wonder if it's more exacerbated in Americans, because I saw this one statistic that was shocking, that America, so we are like 6% of the world's population, but yet we consume 90% of the world's prescription medication. Think about that for just a minute. I mean, and so, God has blessed America in so many ways. And, one of the things that we've done in America is just really learn how to become comfortable, and not
Mhm.
experience any pain, and so yeah, so I think there is that part of it, and it just, let's face it, it is pleasurable, but the Bible says that there is pleasure in sin, but for a season. You're gonna have to pay the piper, so to speak. And so I always say this, that early on in the 90s, I was running from pain, and a deep-seated pain, and so I was trying to escape that loneliness. I was trying to escape that pain and brokenness. But what's interesting is, what I was running from, I found it in large quantities. I found nothing but brokenness and loneliness, and so it was a false promise, and so it just created things worse. But yes, for a moment you do escape, and let's face it, nobody likes to hurt. Nobody likes to feel physical pain or emotional pain, and so this is just one way that people run to, and unfortunately it causes greater harm.
People, oftentimes we are trying to escape from something. We are trying to avoid something. We are trying to not have to face certain things that we're dealing with. A lot of times that can be trauma, past abuse, pain, you name it. And we live in a culture that tries, where we try to get around things. We try to get over things when what we should be doing is getting through them. There are things that you cannot get around. You have got to get through. And God, I think about Psalm 23, right? As I walk through the valley, not around it, not under it, not away from it. I got to walk through it. God never promised me a pain-free life. And he certainly, and he's provided other avenues that are much better than marijuana. I agree with Ray. Marijuana was very much a gateway for me. I know people don't like to hear that argument. I've had young people tell me, Pastor, I'm not a follower. I'm not a follower. My friends don't make me do anything. I make my own choices. I'm not a follower. I have news for you. If you're watching today, we are all followers. We either follow Jesus or we follow the world. Those are your two options, buddy. And that's it. And I learned that. And I used to say that. I only say that because that used to be one of my arguments. And the truth is, either I follow Christ or I follow the world. And that's nonsense. And so for that short time of disconnect, of not being sober, of being high, the long-term effects were that it brought me a lot more pain, and it brought me to a lot worse places than I had ever been. It is a lie. It is an absolute lie that that a lot of people are buying into.
This is a subject matter that we're going to be debating about for a long time. I think, much like alcohol is debated in Christian communities, I think we're going to find that the marijuana use is going to be something that we're going to debate. Both have been proven to, be very destructive to the human body and to relationships. Yet at the same time, we can't seem to eradicate the use of them from our society. And so I think that we're going to be having many more conversations about it. So, gentlemen, I'll give you a chance to kind of weigh in here. Last thoughts on, how is it that the church can respond to marijuana? What's the church to do with marijuana? Pastor Ray, we'll start with you, and then we'll go over to Pastor Jaime.
Yeah. Short answer is I don't know. But, I just think back to my own journey, and I remember how even during those years of addiction, how alive the church that I was going to was. And for me, I tried everything. I tried NA, I tried AA, I tried Coastal Bend Outpatient Program, I tried PADAP, I tried all these 12 steps. And hey, if those things work for you, more power to you. Get in there and really work them. For me, what was kind of a turnoff on the one hand was some of the folks that were in there were sober 10, 15 years, and they were the most miserable, sober people I ever met in my life.
Yeah.
saving grace for me was I was the same time I was going to church. And so I would compare these two, and just the love, the faith that was infused into my life, into my spirit through the word of God. It just was just so attractive. Not to mention, the 12 steps would tell me that, hey, once you're an addict, you're always an addict. And to me, it was almost an excuse to keep doing what I was doing. But then I heard, 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17, that says, if any man be in Christ, the old has passed away, and behold, a new creation. And so I'm like, man, sign me up for that. I want to be a new creation. I don't want to be associated with that. I want to leave that world behind. And so for me, the love of Jesus Christ through the local church, the patience of a few Christians who never judged me, who just encouraged me, who held me accountable and loved me unconditionally. It was the recipe for salvation. And so don't ever underestimate what the local church can do through obedience. And so here I am today. I was a person who was discipled. Now I'm a disciple maker, and discipling other people. And so the gospel is the answer. I mean, just plain and simple. And so, but this conversation is needed, and you've got me thinking on what we need to be doing in the future as well, and what we need to look out for.
Thank you, Pastor Ray, and amen to that. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. So, Pastor Jaime, your closing thoughts with regards to how can the church respond to marijuana? What are we to do, man? What's your thoughts?
1 Corinthians 6 says, everything is permissible to me, but not everything's beneficial. Because just because it goes back to the book, just because something's legal, our laws don't necessarily are not necessarily God's law, and they don't decide what's good and what's bad. And so as a Christian, what's right with it? That has to be the standard. What is right with it? And Paul, the same Paul tells us in Philippians chapter 4, he says, whatever's true, whatever's honorable, whatever's just, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, those are the things, whatever's excellent, anything worthy of praise, think about these things, do these things. And so I think we treat it like we should treat alcohol. We should really warn people about those things. What is it that you're really getting out of it? What is it that you feel you're missing? Because what it tells me is there's something else that's really missing. You're trying to fill a void, and only Christ is going to fill the deepest desires of the soul. And so what worries me the most, and I'll end with this, is everything else that also comes with marijuana: the people, the places, and the things. We are to be set apart for the Lord, and those other, and it's marijuana doesn't come alone. It comes with a ton of strings. So just beware.
Guys, thanks so much. I really appreciate the time that we've had to chat about this subject that I'm sure that you'll have the opportunity to chat about in the future. Thanks for really helping us on the Lead Square call today.
God bless.